the preliminary final last year, and I looked at the start of the game. There's Michael Tuck. He got caught a lot yesterday. He's looking very slow, Tucky. But the start of the game, it looked like Hawthorn were really going to run away with it. It wasn't until the second part of that second quarter when Wilson kicked 2 quick goals and Melbourne got a run on that they went in at half-time with a handy lead, 13-point lead. But that Melbourne side's tremendous the way they fight and they chase and tackle. Their little players are fantastic. There's Ayres, who had a great game.
They got out of his way then, didn't they?
Well, it bounced the right way for him on that stage. Curran had a poor game on the forward line. Dermot Brereton went off at the 6-minute mark of the first quarter, and after that, it was Hawthorn were relying only on Dunstall to kick the goals.
Melbourne's seems to be a very even side, and I think is it the spirit that's really showing through at the moment?
Well, you can see there's a photo in the paper of them today coming off the ground, all together. There's one of the players, O'Dwyer, he's been great for them in the ruck. Really, the Hawthorn ruckman may as well not have been out on the ground for all they did. Harding had...
What about Harding, Peter? Peter Harding.
Well, I think that Paul Harding's got a heck of a long way to go. He's still playing Western Australian football. He's got
turning your back at the centre?
I think he's got to play a little. I'll give you a bit of a rap. He's got to play a little bit more like you used to. Start thumping a few blokes.
Listen.
And it'd be a little bit more.
I take exception to that now.
I think Hawthorn will make a big mistake. Their best ruckman they've got in the club.
You told me to go out and thump someone in the grand final.
Can we get back to the game? Can we get back to the game? The best ruckman they've got there is Paul Abbott, and I reckon they would have played him in the ruck. He's been tried in the ruck. Well, every time I've seen him play there, he's done well.
I suppose you'll say put Chris Langford in the ruck.
I'd have Langford in the ruck.
He was taken apart by Madden in the grand final a couple of years ago.
The ruckman they've got there, Deere had 2 kicks and Harding had 4, and they had 7 hit-outs between them.
Well, Bernie, do you think the selectors were a little bit harsh on that young Lawrence, who's maybe a ruckman of the future for them?
Well, their forward line, they haven't got any height on that forward line to contest the forward pocket throw-ins, so they really need someone up there to do that sort of heavy work.
I noticed you two are not talking about the full forward, Jason Dunstall.
Look, I think Dunstall's one of the best players I've seen in many, many years.
You wouldn't appreciate all the work he does.
He's nearly in the Hudson class, Dunstall.
What about the 2 Melbourne youngsters that are very young players in Andy Lovell and Stephen Fee?
Lovell is great. He kicked, only for his bad kicking, he's kicked 2 goals 4. He would have had a big day. And Phoebe was very impressive when he came on the ground.
What about Wilson? Didn't Wilson stir up the game?
Well, Wilson with those 2 quick goals within a minute really got Melbourne firing in that second quarter.
While we're on you, Bernie, your votes.
The votes, yes. The votes. One player, David Williams, who missed out on last year's preliminary final, really showed what he can do. He kicked 4 goals.
Robbie.
Yeah, he kicked 4 goals in that last quarter, which really won Melbourne the game. And he did a lot of good work on the centre line when he was playing there. Johnson on the back line or on the wing had a lot of possessions and was a great player for Melbourne. And the best player on the ground, Jason Dunstall, with 8 goals. He could have kicked 12 if he had a kick straight.
Robbie, what about them? They're out there in front by a game. Were they ever in that position when you were there? I mean, everybody said they were going to fall like a pack of cards when you retired.
Never been in that position, and I've come in for a fair bit of criticism this week for picking against them, but I suppose that I've tried to look back realistically, and standing aside, I haven't been down to the club only on one occasion, and looking at the omissions from the side, they looked as if they were going to be a weakened combination, but really their spirit was fantastic, and very proud of the way they're performing.
I reckon book yourself a berth at the MCG for September for them. Righto, what about the big game out at Windy Hill, and once again it proved too tough for Collingwood? Kelvin Moore.
Yes, there's a great deal of persistence shown by Essendon yesterday, because early in the game, in the first half in particular, they really did everything wrong. Their general ball skills and kicking and handballing were not what you expect from an Essendon side, whereas Collingwood was smooth. They just started on where they finished last week against Hawthorn and looked a much more accomplished side than the Bombers. But this persistence showed through. They got a big lift in players such as Hawker, young Clark in the forward pocket, which showed up a failing of Collingwood as a real genuine rover. I think when the game had to be won, it was the smaller players for Essendon, along with Salmon in the ruck, that really destroyed Collingwood. Here we see young Keane on the wing. He had a good duel with Brown for a while, but Keane was shifted in the forward line again, and he was a player that helped them greatly in that area. Anderson was on and off of the ground. I'm not quite sure whether they play him in the right position. Sheed seems to play him everywhere else but where he kills Victoria, and that's on the wing. All in all, it wasn't a bad game by Essendon, but I felt the final score probably flattered them a little.
The last couple of weeks, Essendon have come home strong in the last quarter. Maybe the other two sides in Hawthorn and Carlton, could they take a leaf out of Sheedy's book and lighten training during the week to make sure they're performing when it counts in the last quarter?
I don't know about lightning training, because I read that Sheedy actually took them through a training drill on Friday night, and it really looked like they needed
What about
to get the cobwebs out of their system to finish on the way they did.
What about Collingwood, Cal? They've lost their last two games. They've got Footscray this week, another tough one.
Well, I think, it was really a case that they really showed signs of wear over the last month. I think they can come up against Footscray. As I said, I think they're a better side than Essendon in the first half in particular, and the scores flattered Essendon a little bit, so if I was a Bomber, I wouldn't get too carried away with that win.
Both Hawthorn and Collingwood have had very strong pre-season work. Hawthorn won the night premiership, and Collingwood went away and did all sorts of horror camps and that. Is it starting to
horror
tell them?
camps?
Well, they did. They went down there and got lost down in the Otways or something, didn't they?
That's a horror camp.
Well,
yeah,
when you were there, if they saw you coming along, that'd worry them a great
There's a
deal.
lot of theories, but I don't know which one the best, only the time will tell. But my votes I gave a quiet achiever in Gary O'Donnell one vote. He was a steady player for the 4 quarters for Essendon. Darren Mullane, I think he's continued on, and he looked like being the one that may beat Essendon on his own in that first 3 quarters. And Timmy Watson, who was the prime mover for the 3 quarters when Essendon weren't in it, he kept them in the game and continued on. Good effort by Watson.
All right, let's have a look at the votes as they stand, with still 2 matches to be played in round 7. And the progressive voting here sees that the leader is Jason Dunstall, and Mark Bairstow just a vote behind, and then a bunched pack behind them. But interesting to see Jason Dunstall getting the votes yesterday and going to the outright lead in our